Good morning. Thanks very much for the invitation. It's really, I'm so happy to be here. It's such a different mood from my day-to-day, from my routine back in Brazil. I'm so happy to be here and having yesterday the time to think, reflect, listen. And it's so hard in my routine back in Brazil that I'm delighted to be here with all of you. Thanks for the invitation, for the opportunity to share some ideas. And I'll talk pretty much from a Brazilian perspective. I'm sorry about that. I'm not really able to provide a bigger picture for the Amazon basin. But I'll try to create some links on where I think a major challenge for Amazon conservation. And I'll start saying, I think that in the last 15 years, we've been very successful on reducing deforestation. So deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon was reduced almost 80% since 2004. And I think there were three major strategies or three successful stories that connect to this big reduction of deforestation. The first one was a very successful and assertive strategy on creating protected areas. So it was very, very important for reducing deforestation. Then there was the ARPA program or Amazon program. It was critical. It was important. It really reduced deforestation from a practical perspective. So it was a very successful strategy. There's still a lot to be done, of course. Effectiveness of protected areas, some regions without protected areas that need to be addressed. But it's, 50% of protection in the Amazon is not small. It's really important. And I think a lot of people here who are part of this history, so I think it was a great strategy. The second one was, we had a time in Brazil that law enforcement in the Amazon happened. There was a time where there was a government with an aligned vision on conservation of the Amazon. So people like Marina Silva, Tasso Azevedo, André Lima created some very good laws, particularly on municipalities and some operations for combating illegal deforestation. So at that period, I think it was successful. It was a short period, but it was important on this reduction of 80% of deforestation. That at that time we saw, potentially for the first time, a period where there was a good alignment in the government on conserving the Amazon, and some law enforcement and laws were created to reduce the deforestation. That was very important as well. And then I think the third very successful strategy was working on commodities. So I think all that has been done through the soy moratoria and engaging soy traders, and later on engaging some beef slaughtering houses. Particularly the soy moratoria was very successful. I think it really reduced the pressure that soy was driving over Santarém and all of that region. And I think now the current numbers show that soy is not a big driver of deforestation in the Amazon, not in Cerrado. Beef is still a driver, so there's a lot to be done still. There are some other threats like sugar cane being discussed going back to the Amazon, but I think working on commodities and markets was also a successful strategy. So what's the major driver of deforestation today? And there was some discussion around that yesterday. And in my opinion, we are facing a kind of second generation or third generation of deforestation. In my opinion, the major driver of deforestation in the Amazon currently is not supply chains, it's not commodities anymore. Of course, most of the deforestation connects to supply chain, but it's not the supply chain force that is really creating deforestation. Because creating deforestation and it's increasing the deforestation rate in the Amazon currently are the political decisions that are made back in Brasilia or in some states, particularly when Brasilia gives some messages, land grabbers act. It's been clear that. So when all the discussion around the reduction of Jamanchim National Forest started, we also started seeing other public protected areas in south of Amazonas, in Pará, being invaded. So more land grabbers go inside protected areas. So it's clear. So if the government says, if you do something wrong, I'm gonna catch it, then people listen to that. If government says, if you do something wrong, go ahead, because afterwards I will, make you formal, there won't be any problem, you're not going to be in trouble. People also listen to that and act because of that. So I think, looking forward, the major, what we need to be, I would say, not what we have not done well, but looking forward, what we need to pay more attention is how to do conservation in the Amazon in the absence of political will. Because that's really the situation right now. And actually, all of the threats, all of the discussions that are happening in the Congress, in the Brazilian Congress right now, because all of the balance of power and bargaining that the Congress has over the president is threatening all the achievements for the last 15 years. It truly is. It's threatening all the protected areas that were created. There's a law project being voted that can stop the creation of new protected areas and can even threat the past one, those that were not, that there's still some issues on compensating private properties. So it's a major threat, and it's been discussed in the Congress without, in my opinion, a critical participation and critical levers from civil society and from the conservation group to stop that, because it's pretty much a Congress president kind of bargain. So it's really challenging. And then you see threats to protected areas, threats to indigenous lands, threats to environmental licensing, which from an infrastructure perspective will be a tragedy, will be really impactful. There's a new wave of discussion for a new flexibilization of forest codes that also sends signs to producers that they don't have to comply with law. So there's a big, let's say, rollback movement in Brazil over the social, environmental, legal framework. And I think we are not very ready to deal with that. It's been like, in the environmental movement in Brazil, we are like, trying to figure out what to do. And we were, I think in terms of policy and advocacy strategies, this is an area that we are not that good. We have not developed our skills on that. And we need to further develop that. There was an article this week about the Movimento Brasil Livre, MBL, that was in Piauí magazine, that show how organized this movement, and this movement was responsible for the impeachment of President Dilma, and is really, in my opinion, really dangerous, because it's a vision of the world that is very different from mine. But they are very well organized. It's a new movement, but politically, they're very well rounded, very well organized. They're fundraising. They are doing a great advocacy work. And we are like kids compared to them. So I think this is something that we need to further develop if we want, because it's not something for today. This is not going to end in 2019 after elections. I'm sure we'll live with a government without political will to protect forests for quite some more time. Particularly the Amazon states, that the figures for next year election are really bad. There's a big chance that the new governors will be less aligned on a conservation point of view than the current ones. So we have to deal with this. Those are the ones who take decisions. And generally, politicians don't listen, that are not aligned with this vision, they don't listen pretty much to experts. They listen to voters. So if we want to change decision makers and politicians, we need to be able to talk to voters. And it's amazing how the environmental issues, conservation, protection of forests, climate change, is not really much part of the dialogue, of the public debate. So you don't see very often these issues being discussed. The common sense, the editorials in newspapers, magazines, are always dealing in the opposite, more pro-development, economic growth. So I agree when yesterday there was discussion about the right narrative. I don't think we have that yet. I don't think we were able to connect a low carbon economy, a reduction on deforestation, reduction on carbon emissions, to a development discourse, to a development narrative, to economic growth narrative. Why not? So what economic growth looks like in the Amazon? What is the vision for that? How can we phrase that? How can we promote economic growth in the Amazon, for the Amazon states, protecting the forest? The current vision is, for the Amazon, is agribusiness, infrastructure, mining, with a group of private and public protected areas. That's the current vision, right? Is this a good one? That was the development model that dominated the Atlantic rainforest colonization and development. Is this a good one for the Amazon? Is this a vision that respects local people's rights? So I think we need to replace this current vision, and we need to do that from a development and economic growth perspective. So we need to demonstrate that the economy of the forest is something that can drive development. Because otherwise we'll stay working on drivers. We'll keep trying to tackle drivers, but we're not replacing the model. So just like trying to avoid the drivers to advance, but you're not putting anything in, to replace that. So replacing that means we need, and I love the discussion yesterday about making Amazon business friendly. But I would say it's not business friendly for agribusiness, if you allow me. It's making business friendly for biodiversity, for the use of biodiversity. I love the Lego development box. So what do we have? We have biodiversity. Thinking about that 5 years or 10 years ago seems to me to be very different from today. Why is that? Think about the role of the Amazon in a world that you can sequence human DNA in 2 hours. That was not the case 5 years ago, right? Now you can. So what does that mean? So technology, biotechnology, the technology about genes, DNA, has evolved so much. And the Amazon is not just a Lego of timber, Brazil nuts, a forest product, but it's a huge Lego box of genes, DNA. It's probably the largest Lego box on that in the world, right? So in a world that you can sequence DNA in 2 hours, thinking about that takes new dimension. And we need to be ready to do that. And we need to discuss that with startups, with Silicon Valley companies, on how can you start playing business or doing business in the Amazon on biotechnology, being fair, sharing benefits, leaving richness for local people, promoting development, and not only taking and leaving, avoiding biopiracy. I think it's possible. It has to be possible, because otherwise we'll be forever avoiding the threats to advance, but we won't be replacing the current model. But my provocative message is we need to make that new vision for the Amazon to become true. And not only by designing this on theoretical model and having 10 or 20 companies being out there and doing so, which is already a major step, but we also need to communicate this new model to the general public, to voters. Because then this is going to be part also of the political debate. This is also going to be part of the elections debate. And just to finalize, I think next year, because of elections, there's an important opportunity for this kind of debate. Because all of the political and economic crisis in Brazil, there'll be a strong debate around what is the development model for the country. The major of it will be on economic growth, how to restart economic growth in the country. Will be on corruption, how to avoid corruption, politic reform. But how can we make environmental part of this debate, forest protection part of this debate? We have to try. This will be an opportunity. We have to participate and try to use that as a moment where we participate in the public debate. We present that up. I don't know how we call that, Claudia, bioeconomy or something that for the Amazon. I don't know how to call that, but that's something like that is important for as a lever for economic growth for Brazil. The low carbon economy is the way forward and is a great opportunity. So that's my major provocative message here for you. Thank you.